as far as the rest of the Green Party platform, we talked about our values, but again, how does that translate into actual policy? What sort of things do we want to see happen? Um, as we get Green Party members elected, for example. In addition to the Green New Deal, we support a single-payer healthcare system. A lot of people refer to that as Medicare for all. In particular, improve Medicare for all because you need to make sure that it covers, a lot more services, including dental and optical eye vision and hearing and stuff like that. But really, improve Medicare for all only talks about how to cover who pays for the system. And there would still be problems within the system that's driven by profits. And so, really, that single payer healthcare is a stepping stone to a more universal healthcare system that actually puts the whole healthcare system, hospitals and pharmaceuticals and things, into more of a nonprofit stance. That's controlled by communities. Your hospital is controlled by your community to make sure that it's really serving your community, to make sure it's really there for the people and not for insurance companies, for example. So we do support single payer, but toward a real universal healthcare system. We support a universal basic income and a federal jobs guarantee. That's part of kind of our Green New Deal. And those policies together, like I said, make sure that no one is left behind, that everyone has a living wage, that everyone has really, we're going for a thriving wage that people can actually, feel comfortable on and raise families and not worry about what are they going to do in retirement. Are they going to lose their house in retirement or something like that? We want to make sure we're taking care of everyone. A big difference with other parties and all is that the Green Party has for quite some time now supported reparations for various forms of genocide and slavery and the racist Jim Crow laws that still even haunt us today with mass incarceration, for example. So the Green Party supports a reparations process to deal with the legacy of racism in the country. We support ending the war on drugs. The biggest example, of course, is decriminalizing cannabis, legalizing possession, sale, and cultivation, and making sure that we're granting amnesty to everyone who's being held in prison right now for using cannabis. They should have never been in prison for the first place. So that's something we support. Anti-imperialism is a big one, of course, standing up to wars and the ever-growing military budget that saps resources away from doing things like a Green New Deal and healthcare and all. And especially with the growing conflict in Ukraine and Russia and all, we have to be concerned about the nuclear weapons race between particularly the US and Russia that have the most nuclear weapons. So, we want to stand up to wars, and we also want to move toward actually dismantling that nuclear arsenal before we end up creating our own planet-wide cataclysm. We have climate change to deal with, but we also have nuclear weapons proliferation. So that's an important thing that you don't hear other parties talk about. And then finally, just to kind of touch on things, again, there's a lot more to the Green Party platform than this, but just to kind of give you the highlights if you're not familiar, these were some of the steps. The last one here is election reforms. I had mentioned that we don't really have a direct democracy. We have this kind of oligarchic representative thing. And so the Green Party, of course, supports making the system into something that's more directly democratic. So that includes not just ranked choice voting, which is thankfully starting to become more popular. People are talking about it more. But doing just ranked choice voting isn't enough. It has to be a proportional form of voting. It has to be proportional representation, which makes sure that entire legislatures actually represent the communities that elect them, that they're diverse and broad, diverse in many different ways, not just political party affiliation, but also various demographics, right, to make sure that it's really representative. We need equitable ballot access and media time. We need public funded elections and various other things to try to make sure that our election system is more fair and that we're pushing as much decision making powering all down to communities at the local levels as possible to create more of a real grassroots democracy.
To jump in real quick, Garrett.
Yeah.
Third parties are often portrayed as, these fringe elements, right? These outsider ideas. And but when you look at the things that you just talked about, right? The majority of Americans support single payer healthcare. The majority of Americans support a Green New Deal. The majority of Americans want more choices on the ballot, right? These are the Green Party policies are largely majoritarian policies that aren't, upheld by either of the major parties. So, a good one to look at is Medicare for All, where we see over 90% of Democrats and over 50% of Republicans supporting it. But maybe 10% of the Republicans and Democrats in Congress are actually push for it. And I think it might even be being generous at 10%, right? Even the Squad and the Progressive Democrats, you haven't heard a peep about Medicare for All from them for quite some time. And the last time I remember it being part of the discourse, it was the Force the Vote movement, where it was trying to get them to actually push something. So, the last time Medicare for All was a major part of, even wider progressive discourse, let alone the general American political discourse, was because of inaction on it from people who said that they supported it. So, that I was on a live stream last night for the Illinois Green Party, and one of the things I talked about was, we really suffer from a problem with our political culture. And I like to talk about it in terms of negative and positive voting, right? And since France just had their re-election and elected Macron, I can say it's the same there, because they did a poll, and 90% of Macron's voters voted for him to stop Le Pen. Only like 6% voted because they liked his policies, and the very same thing is recognizable in the United States. The Democrats, probably since Obama, haven't run a positive vote for us for our policies campaigns, right? Democratic campaigns, especially on the national level, tend to rely on extortion and coercion, and saying, well, if you don't vote for us, you get the Republicans. So we have a political culture where we vote against things. And then unsurprisingly, that leads us to never getting the things that we want, because we never act, we need to shift that. If we want to see positive change in this country, really, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, right? Most of the political spectrum is not being represented right now. But we need to shift it and have a political culture that encourages and allows, because right now it's not allowed to vote for a lot of the things we want, because we can't get on the ballot, right? Because we're kept, the other options are kept off the ballot. But we really need to have that shift where we vote for things that we want rather than against it. And Howie talked about it by saying lost in the sauce, right? If you're a Green New Deal Democrat and you voted for Biden, no one knows that, because you voted for someone who was openly against the Green New Deal. And the same goes for Medicare for All. The same goes for ending the war on drugs. The same goes for peace. The same goes for every single reparations and electoral reform, every single thing on there. If you believe in those policies and you voted for the Biden administration, even if it was a rational choice based on fear of Trump, you voted against all of your interests. And so when we have a political culture that has us voting against things we don't like rather than for things we do like, it basically ensures we'll never get the positive things. We're always voting for a lesser evil, and a lesser evil is still evil.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this platform, the Green Party platform that we've talked about,
We might have lost Garrett.
No, even a majority of Republicans want most of these reforms here. So it's important to keep that in mind, that this platform has large support. It's that Congress doesn't actually represent the people it claims to represent. And so the Green Party is trying to represent that view that isn't heard in the two old parties that exist.